What is the deal, YouTube? What's the deal, YouTube? Welcome back to the channel. So I do this every year. Every year before the start of the season, I give my top five quarterbacks for 2000 and whatever the season is that we're talking about. Of course, this year is 2016, 2017. It was a very difficult year for me. A couple quarterbacks that you'll notice in my top five list have been shuffled around from what I'm used to. I have a brand new number one quarterback going into the 2016 2017 season. So, without further ado, now I also want to just say this real quick. I will never give anyone a top five for one good year. You can't make my top five list and have one good season. Hence, one of my honorable mentions for this year is Cam Newton. Had a fantastic 2015, 2016, but to me, he's not a top five quarterback. You can't have one good season um, and have the rest of them be fairly mediocre and be a top five quarterback. The other one, a guy on the rise to me, is Blake Bortles. Excellent season from Blake Bortles. I didn't even pull up his numbers. My bad. I have everybody else's numbers up, but I did not pull up Blake Bortles' numbers. Give me one moment. We're going to pull up Blake Bortles' numbers. Uh, Blake Bortles is one of my honorable mentions. I think that Jacksonville Jaguar team is a team to look out for. Last season, Blake Bortles with 35 touchdowns and 18 interceptions. So a fairly good season for Blake Bortles. This year, I think they get a little bit more scarier. They definitely added a big time piece in Jalen Ramsey on the defensive side of the ball. One of my guys that I'm dropping out of my top five before I even get started with my list is Joe Flacco. Horrible season last year, didn't make the playoffs. He usually shines in the playoffs, but he didn't make the playoffs last year, and not a good season for Mr. Joe Flacco. I really like him as a playoff quarterback. To me, he's the best playoff quarterback in football. But last year was just not a good season for him at all. A lot of hurt fucking people on that Ravens team, and it might just be their fucking karma for cutting Ray Rice. Might be because that team has kind of went downhill. All right, so without further ado, let's jump into my top five quarterbacks in 2016, 2017. Of course, taking a look at what they did last year and forecasting what I feel like they will do for this year. Starting with number five, I'm going to go with Eli Manning. Last year, Eli Manning, 35 touchdowns, 14 interceptions. Decent year for Eli Manning. Another healthy season for Odell Beckham Jr. I don't know what the health is going to be for Cruz. And I know they went out and they drafted another speedster, another great route runner to put on the other side. So that giant offense can be a little bit more scary. They stole our defensive end in Olivia Vernon and gave him one hell of a contract. Don't know how the defense is going to look, but I'm going to forecast Eli Manning to be in my top five for 2016, 2017. Um, the next quarterback who I think is going to have one hell of a year, and he had a decent year last year, is Big Ben Roethlisberger. I thought his numbers were better than they actually were. Big Ben Roethlisberger had 21 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. Kind of doesn't make sense for me to put him over Eli Manning and make him the fourth quarterback. But I just think he's a better quarterback than Eli Manning. I think he has more tools to work with. And then you throw in the best receiver in the game. You throw in the fact that he has a better running game than Eli down there with the Giants. And I'm definitely putting Big Ben Roethlisberger as my number four quarterback on my list. The number 3 quarterback on my list, he's going to be suspended for the first 4 games of the season. Last year, 36 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. Of course, I am talking about Tom Brady. Once again, everyone knows how I feel about a Patriot. Fuck a Patriot. But anyway, whatever the case may be, you got to give the guys props. Another great season. One of the greatest statistical quarterbacks, to ever play football, ever play the game of football. And that's why Tom Brady is my number 3 quarterback on my top 5 quarterbacks of 2016 and 2017. And this is where it gets interesting because my number 1 and my number 2 has switched around for this year. My number 2 quarterback, and I can't believe I'm saying this. A lot of people are not going to believe I'm saying this, but my number 2 quarterback for 2016, 2017 is Mr. Aaron Rodgers. Let's take a look at Aaron's stats from last year. Last year, Aaron Rodgers, 31 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Phenomenal season considering the fact that he didn't have his number 1 receiver in Jordy Nelson. His offensive line was absolute shit. See, this is why when people tell me shit, like, and his running back was a fat bowling ball and shit, like, this is why when people tell me shit like, oh, the quarterback ain't got it, man, shut the fuck up. When you see the stats that Aaron Rodgers and Andrew Luck are both able to put up behind bad offensive lines and limited weapons, don't tell me nothing. I don't want to hear it. Shut the hell up with that bullshit. He ain't got no running game. Yeah, T.Y. Hilton was Andrew Luck's only receiver. They haven't had a running game since Edgerrin James, and they still made it to the AFC Championship. Yeah. Shh. Anyway, my number 2 quarterback is Aaron Rodgers, one of the best pure arms in the NFL. He gets his number 1 receiver back to go with Cobbs and all those weapons. I still think that, to me, all of the quarterbacks that do very well always have that security blanket over the middle. Whether it's Brady and Gronkowski or Tony Romo and Witten or I've never seen an elite quarterback or a quarterback in that group of guys that didn't have a top receiver. Phillip Rivers and Antonio Gates. Like, I really don't understand. Ever since, I forget his name. Shit, he was always hurt. He was always hurt for the Green Bay Packers, but he was a good damn receiving tight end. And ever since him, they haven't really had one of those guys. I don't understand why they don't get Aaron Rodgers a big security blanket over the middle. And maybe that's easier said than done. I mean, when Drew Brees had he's with the Seattle Seahawks now. Forget his name as well. I'm bad with names. I'm horrible with names. Not good with names at all. But like every single good quarterback you can ever name has always had that big time security blanket over the middle. Back when in the Troy Aikman days, or I mean, even down with Rathman. Remember Rathman, Tom Rathman, or fucking Dan Marino had Keith Jackson, and he had a couple other guys. I really don't remember John Elway's tight ends. I don't remember those guys, but that was a long ass time ago. But anyway, like I don't understand why they don't get Aaron Rodgers a good tight end to go with him. Anyway, and after you see what happens with Matt Ryan after Tony Gonzalez goes away, see how that offense kind of went down a bit. Yeah. Anyway, and my number 1 quarterback, the number 1 quarterback for the 2016-2017 season is Mr. Russell Wilson. Now, I've compared Russell Wilson to a lot. I've compared Russell Wilson to Big Ben Roethlisberger. These are his stats from last year. 34 touchdowns with 8 interceptions. Phenomenal numbers from Russell Wilson. Now, I've compared him to Big Ben Roethlisberger, and a lot of people have gotten this thing confused. A lot of people think when I say, when I compare those two, that I'm comparing playing styles. That's not what I'm comparing. If you go back to the early days of Big Ben Roethlisberger, you notice that the team didn't rest on his shoulders. You notice that Big Ben Roethlisberger had Jerome Bettis and Fast Willie Parker. They were a team that were built on the run. Remember? And as the team continued to grow, Bettis went away, Parker went away, Mike Wallace, and all of those other weapons came. Remember? And then they became a Big Ben Roethlisberger team. I feel like now we're in that Russell Wilson phase. He first came, they were a beast mode team. They were running the ball, but you still seen the arm talent there. You still seen the skill. Last year, beast mode goes away. He throws 34 touchdowns and 8 interceptions. This year, I think he continues to make progress. I don't think last year is his best year. I think this year, in the coming years, will be the best years for Russell Wilson. And that's the reason why. I mean, and if you look at the receivers that he has, he doesn't have really great receivers. Doug Baldwin had one hell of a season last year. And a lot of that had to do with the talent of Russell Wilson. Now, I'm not taking anything away from Doug Baldwin, but come on now. Come on now. Not to mention, Russell Wilson has the ability to make your secondary cover a receiver forever. I don't care how good your cornerbacks are. Having to cover a receiver because the quarterback is able to elude players, make people miss, and allow those receivers to get open is a huge, huge advantage. And I think this is the year that Russell Wilson, well, last year was phenomenal. I think he takes it a step higher this year. I can see him throwing for 40 touchdowns. And he's going to get his big tight end. He threw for 34 touchdowns and 8 interceptions, and his big tight end was hurt most of the season. This year, he gets that big tight end back. I think he throws for 40 touchdowns, and I think he is, this year, the MVP of the NFL. You've heard it right here, 2016, 2017. Your MVP is going to be none other than Russell Wilson. Anyway, folks, that is my quarterback list. We got the running back, wide receiver list coming up. Let me know what you feel about this. Let's start the conversation. NFL is back.